In this world, there was no shortage of people born with silver spoons in their mouths, and Wang Ling was one of them. But he was the richest of them all, and with his birth, he almost overturned the whole of cultivation society. In a plainly decorated family apartment, Mr. and Mrs. Wang rocked a baby carriage with loving smiles on their faces. I can't believe how, in a blink of an eye, our sweetie has grown so much. That's right. It's also our Ling Ling's birthday today. Darling, did you prepare any gifts? Of course I did. Saying this, a middle-aged man surprised the woman next to him by drawing out the long and thick magic treasure that hung at his waist. This tough and long magic treasure, richly adorned with fantastic gemstones, was truly dazzling to the eye. Mouth slightly open in astonishment, the woman stared blankly at it. What is this? A Chanel flying sword. Father Wang looked so proud as he boasted, it cost me a full half-year's income to specially buy this gift for our Ling Ling. Until now, not a single person in our Wang family has managed to reach the golden core stage. Darling, the sword represents my hope for Ling Ling. In this world where cultivation and modern science were perfectly combined, the diploma had completely given way to the realm system, and had become the new criterion for determining one's degree of education. The pitiful Wang couple had never graduated from the physical build stage, and remained stagnant at this preliminary stage. This Chanel flying sword, which was classified at core formation level, was worth cities. Father Wang had gritted his teeth and bought it at the risk of tightening his belt in the coming days. However, sucking on a pacifier in the baby carriage, Wang Ling only gave the sword a cursory look out of the corner of his eye before contemptuously giving it the cold shoulder. This was the first time he had seen such an ugly flying sword. What dumbfounded him the most was that this man actually put such an unsightly sword near his pillow, and even kept on saying that it was for warding off evil spirits. What a pile of shit. Hadn't the four-olds one been abolished 2000 years ago? This was the scientific age of cultivation. Where the hell had this feudalistic remnant come from? With a completely speechless look, Wang Ling stretched out a hand less than a quarter of the size of Mr. Wang's, and directly snapped that unsightly flying sword in two. That year, he was only 1 year old. After Wang Ling broke the flying sword at the age of 1 with his bare hands, the Wang couple directly complained to the Bureau of Quality Supervision about being sold a shoddy product by an unscrupulous businessman. There was no way a mere baby could destroy a core formation flying sword with just his hand. At that time, Wang Ling's parents had erroneously assumed that they had bought a fake Chanel flying sword. It was when Wang Ling was 3, and the couple witnessed their son flying around the room skillfully on a small children's wooden sword, that they realized that they hadn't bought a fake Chanel sword. Instead, they had clearly given birth to a fake son. As muggles that had stagnated at the physical build stage for years, no matter how they racked their brains, the Wang couple just couldn't figure out how they had managed to give birth to Wang Ling. Was it because of a genetic mutation? Or had some critical steps been skipped during Wang Ling's creation? But all these weren't important. More than anything else, Wang Ling's parents believed that he was God's gift to the Wang family as the chosen one. Because Wang Ling's parents pretty much had shit for brains, he managed to lead a peaceful life from 0 to 5 years of age, which was when he was the weakest. Otherwise, Wang Ling thought that under normal circumstances, he would have been sent to a human research institute as a test subject a long time ago. Maybe he could still appear on that popular television show, Approaches to Science. Wang Ling realized that his realm advanced with his age, but this wasn't accompanied by the great waves he had imagined, nor any exaggerated anomalies in heaven or on earth. On average, he achieved a new realm once every 2 years, and even he himself didn't know why this was the case. So that his aura wouldn't be exposed, Wang Ling drew a talisman based on something he had found in an ancient text, and stuck it on his right arm. Thanks to the talisman concealing his aura, he was able to lead a peaceful life for many years. Wang Ling was 16 years old this year. His high school life had come faster than he had imagined. To disguise himself as an ordinary person, Wang Ling tended to keep a low profile in his daily life. He wasn't looking to enter any of the key city high schools, and instead chose to study in a normal public high school, number 60 High School in Peiyong District, Songhai City. Wang Ling came to school in a plain white shirt and jeans. He looked around. Apart from some carved sculptures at the school's front gate, their features no longer distinguishable, as well as a handful of palm trees in the surrounding area. The school was even more ordinary than he had imagined. If this had been an out-and-out key city high school, all the trees in the school grounds would be those that could gather spirit energy. Also, there would even be an enormous spirit gathering array under the school, so that students would be attentive and refreshed in their studies all the time. But such a spirit gathering array would be utterly useless to Wang Ling. Because of his much higher realm, not only wouldn't he be able to feel its feeble spirit energy, it would also be very easy for him to destroy the magnetic field of the array. Wang Ling adamantly didn't want to be the reason for jeopardizing other people's prospects, which was why he had chosen a relatively normal high school. Although it seemed to have a fairly crude environment, overall, he found it very satisfactory. This place, at least, would be very good for hiding his true prowess. Today was a meet and greet for new students at No. 60 High School, and also for them to undergo a placement test. Before new students officially entered the school authorities needed to grade each student. Based on the results, they would be streamed into the different classes: elite, advanced, normal and remedial. Wang Ling stood in front of a liquid crystal display screen, and following the directions on it, looked for the class where he would be doing his interview. Given his style, there was no way he would enter the conspicuous elite class, which would massively increase his risk of exposure. However, entering the remedial class would also be a little degrading. Taking everything into consideration, it would be best for him to choose the advanced class or normal class. "Excuse me, do you know the way to grade 1, class 3? Suddenly, there was a sweet voice behind Wang Ling. He froze for a second. Although he had felt the girl's aura from afar the moment she had walked through the school's front gate, he had obviously never expected that she would actually take the initiative to talk to him. With just a cursory glance out of the corner of his eye, Wang Ling could see that she was pretty good looking. "Are you also here to enroll today?" Not getting a response from Wang Ling, the unfamiliar girl kept on asking questions as if they knew each other. She was elegant, with long hair and fair skin, and wore a tight-fitting white t-shirt, jeans and casual shoes. Wang Ling only needed to use a little bit of his spirit energy to immediately determine her actual strength. He had all the makings of an elite student, and definitely wouldn't be his classmate. But as chance would have it, Wang Ling's interview was going to be conducted in the same room that the girl had mentioned, grade 1, class 3. Still without saying a word, Wang Ling pointed at a classroom nearby, which was grade 1, class 3. Right after that, he casually strolled away, hands in the pockets of his jeans. This was the first time that Lotus Sun had taken the initiative to start a conversation. Unexpectedly, the other party hadn't responded at all. She felt that this boy in a white shirt and a refreshing crew cut had a completely different style to the frisky lowlife types that she usually encountered. Rather than a proud and aloof air, he had a special aura and a strong sense of mystery about him which had caught Lotus Sun's attention at first glance. "This classmate, are you also doing the interview in grade 1, class 3? Classmate, may I know your last name?" Along the way, Lotus Sun tried her best to become friendlier with Wang Ling. However, his poker face never changed, and he showed no intention of responding to her at all. This was really embarrassing. Ellipsis. This was the first time Wang Ling had given directions to another person. If he and Lotus Sun hadn't happened to share the same destination, he wouldn't have even bothered to raise his arm. He really hated interacting with other people, especially once he had reached the soul formation stage the year he turned 7. He had mastered the ability to read minds, and was hearing people's inner voices all the time. Since then, his ears had never had a moment's peace, especially at night. If he didn't put in earplugs, he probably would go insane. Just like with Lotus Sun, who on the surface looked like she was just trying her best to break the ice between them, Wang Ling could very clearly hear what she was thinking. She was wholly unhappy with his indifference. To be honest, Wang Ling felt that it was a waste of her talent to study in number 60 high school. With her strength, It wouldn't matter which key high school she went to, she would definitely be in the elite stream. Lotus Sun's reason for coming here was completely opposite to Wang Ling's. Wang Ling went out of his way to hide his status, while Lotus Sun had racked her brain for a way to emphasize her presence. In a key high school, top students were a dime a dozen, and standing out wouldn't be easy. But in an ordinary environment like number 60 high school, Lotus Sun felt she would definitely be able to showcase her presence. She had never expected that just as she entered the school, there would actually be a boy who would turn a blind eye to her. Damn it. Was this blockhead gay or something? Wang Ling had never expected that just as he entered the school, he would actually attract a girl's attention. What a shitty situation. At this moment, the two people walking abreast of each other could not help but sigh silently. Ellipsis. The enrollment interview was just like the placement test that had been used hundreds of years ago. It was aimed at determining each student's rank without prejudice amidst massive student numbers. Having said that, students who could enter number 60 high school were all already at the foundation establishment stage. But the stage was further divided into several levels. While there seemed to be just a narrow gap between early and late foundation establishment, the difference in overall strength was very large, and students on both ends in the same class were bound to clash with one another. In the relatively small classroom, 3 examiners sat in a row. There were also a number of other teenagers already present who were all there for the interview. Wang Ling walked directly to the back of the classroom, and slipped into the most inconspicuous seat there. The instant Lotus Sun walked into the classroom, her movie star looks caught the eye of all the teens. And even that of the 3 examiners. The men in the classroom, young and old, blushed in spite of themselves. Even a few of the girls dropped their heads shyly. My name is Lotus Sun. We are going to be schoolmates from now on. I look forward to your guidance. Lotus Sun had always been both a man and lady killer, and enjoyed being in the spotlight. Bowing naturally and gracefully, she tossed back her beautiful hair and gave an easy and confident smile. The only thing that dissatisfied Lotus Sun was Wang Ling's damn unchanging poker face. In this world, how could there be a man unmoved by her? In her heart, she started to think of a plan to capture Wang Ling's attention. On the other side, the 3 examiners were astonished after Lotus Sun introduced herself. Sun, Lotus Sun. One of the male examiners had a stunned expression on his face. Which Lotus Sun? Don't tell me it's that Lotus Sun. Another examiner hurriedly flipped through the interview materials for the candidates that day, and in the end couldn't help swearing. Holy shit! The eldest grandchild of the Haguo Water Curtain Group. Lotus Sun. That was the Fortune 500 company that made its name selling elixirs. On the other side, a silent Wang Ling heard what the 3 examiners said, and frowned suddenly. He had already guessed that Lotus Sun's identity wasn't so simple. But he hadn't expected that she would come from such a powerful family. His plan was to keep a low profile, which was why he had chosen a relatively ordinary high school. Who knew that even before school officially started, he would already encounter such a huge headache? Wang Ling watched as Lotus Sun smilingly came over, directly drawing up a chair to sit next to him. He was speechless. Why the hell would the eldest granddaughter of a Fortune 500 company come running to such a mediocre high school to prove herself? Or were the rich second generation nowadays fond of moving around incognito? Wang Ling closed his eyes, directly ignoring the way Lotus Sun was making eyes at him. Anyway, as long as he was careful not to reveal too much of his real strength, he should be able to get rid of this annoying person without a hitch, right? Wang Ling didn't want an obsessive maniac staring at him non-stop in class the whole day. A moment later, the voice of one of the examiners sounded from the dais. The interview is about to begin. Everyone, please prepare yourselves. For all senior high school students who were at the same foundation establishment stage, the enrollment interview wasn't as complex as they might have expected, and was mainly about testing their strength. Scientific research had shown that it was not as difficult to reach the foundation establishment stage as one might have imagined. As long as a person had adequate nutrition as a child, along with a bit of innate skill, it wasn't hard to achieve the stage. Of course, there was also one extraordinary Freak in particular, who had advanced at a rate of one stage every 2 years completely without the help of elixirs. Unlike the Wang couple's generation, which had suffered from a lack of nutrition. Almost every child in urban areas nowadays had access to all kinds of healthcare products from a young age. Things like Diamond Partners and Brain Gold, popular brand name healthcare products that enhanced a person's cultivation base, increased intelligence, and built up the physique, were all produced by Haguo Water Curtain Group. But the reliance on supplements to enhance one's foundation had also created the worst problem. As the common saying went, gold and jade on the outside, rot and decay on the inside. The threshold for entering the foundation establishment stage was already low enough. Yet the school couldn't be certain whether a student's true strength actually matched the stage. This was the real reason why high schools had set up an entrance test. Apart from obtaining clear assessment results, it was also for identifying potential genius. By the time Wang Ling's batch graduated, the number of students who would be able to break out of the foundation establishment ENT stage to become a master at the Golden Core stage, Golden Core transformation rate, would have a direct impact on the school's reputation. More importantly, it would be a critical evaluation criterion in the school's application to become a key high school at a later date. On the days, a middle-aged examiner with a sharp face said slowly, "Over the years in our number 60 high school, the success rate for attaining Golden Core has been 2 in 10,000. That is to say, out of 10,000 students, there might be 2 in their graduating year who will be able to become what people in the modern age all dream of, Golden Core Masters. They in turn can take their dreams of reaching the nascent soul stage to a better university. I hope that in the next 3 years, every student here will work hard, aim high, and strive toward becoming a qualified successor of cultivation principles." 2 in 10,000 might sound a little embarrassing, but number 60 high school recruited just under 300 students each year. After all, Wang Ling knew that this wasn't too terrible a statistic, since some of the worst schools couldn't even achieve that. Next, we shall begin with the strength test. Everyone, please put on your VR glasses for phase 1 of the test. With a roll book in his hand, one of the examiners cleared his throat slightly and called out a name. First candidate, Lotus Sun. It was the cultivation year 4396. VR, virtual reality technology, was now highly developed, and was put to use in all major high schools. At the same time, VR equipment was indispensable for conducting exams in ordinary foundation establishment high schools. VR equipment with built-in spirit energy sensors perfectly transmitted all kinds of data on the user's spirit energy to the system and reflected it back into the virtual environment. Of course, the equipment would be even more advanced in a key city high school. The technology was a fusion of holograms and cultivation talismans which could warp time and space in an instant, switch between scenes smoothly, and simulate a real environment as well as feelings of pain. But Wang Ling was indifferent to all of this. No matter how advanced the simulation technology was, it was still only simulating the cultivation environment at the foundation establishment stage. Wang Ling wouldn't feel the slightest bit of pain, even if he stood still for a demon king to punch him in the chest. This was because he had already long attained a sage body. That year, he had just turned 9 years old. For Wang Ling, what he needed to pay the most attention to was how to pull back his aura precisely. Otherwise, his highly intense magnetic energy field would interfere with the virtual glasses due to the huge gap in realms, and could result in the system crashing. To prepare for the placement test, he had been assiduously practicing holding back his aura at home in the last few days, and had already destroyed hundreds of virtual glasses. At that moment, Lotus Sun had already put on the glasses, and everyone else could clearly see what was happening to her on a screen on the side. She was up against a virtual demon, a gigantic toad. This toad was modeled on one of the beasts in the demon rampage 6 years ago, a demon king called Sky-Swallowing Toad. That year, the person who had defeated this demon king was a graduate of number 60 high school, the legendary Odd Duo. In the thousands of years since number 60 high school had been established, Odd Duo was perhaps the most formidable talent the school had ever nurtured. While he came from an impoverished background, he had shown brilliant talent. When he was very young, the headmaster of number 60 high school had taken one look at him before taking him in as his disciple, thus granting him direct entry into the school. The year Orjuo graduated, he had only been 18 years old, but was already an unparalleled master at the late Golden Core stage. After that, Orjuo joined the general administration of 100 cultivation schools as deputy director, becoming the youngest director in its history. But at the time, he had only been well known in a small region. It was his dazzling performance during the Demon Rampage 6 years ago that truly made him a great name. At that time, Orjuo had released a burst of chi from one finger, which shot thousands of Li-1 through the air to kill the sky-swallowing toad as it emerged from the gate between worlds to besiege the city. In one stroke, Orjuo became known to the world after this battle. From then on, number 60 high school would use the sky-swallowing toad directly in their assessments. On one hand, it was in honor of Orjuo. On the other hand, it called for all students to look to him as a role model. As a result, the toad could be found in almost every school exam, so number 60 high school alumni jokingly called it the devil toad. After the system update, I heard that the sky-swallowing toad assessment was also upgraded. That's right. When Orjuo killed the sky-swallowing toad, he also gained possession of its primordial spirit. Unfortunately, the school's equipment back then didn't have the capability to transmit its spirit into the system. Now that the system has been updated, we uploaded the sky-swallowing toad's spirit into the system's data core for a perfect simulation. One of the examiners gazed at the colossal cyan creature on the virtual battlefield, and frowned deeply in spite of himself. I'm afraid that even for Lotus Sun, this might still be difficult to handle. Although the school had set up the sky-swallowing toad assessment by level of difficulty, the system score was still based on data from the sky-swallowing toad's spirit in order to simulate an actual environment, so the test was harder compared with last year. At present, the sky-swallowing toad was still at the middle foundation establishment stage. The test result would be far from satisfactory if Lotus Sun failed to discover its weak point at the very start in order to deal it critical damage. Everyone's eyes were fixed on Lotus Sun, while Wang Ling gave a big yawn as he looked at the screen. Apart from being at the foundation establishment stage at the very least, dealing with the sky-swallowing toad and causing sufficient damage also required real aptitude. Wang Ling's current abilities of perception far outclassed that of scientific instruments. His eyes were like a portable radiation machine. With just one look, he could determine the meridian levels of every single person in the room. 256 meridians needed to be opened up to fully realize the foundation establishment stage, and 75% of Lotus Sun's meridians were already open. Even if she was unlucky and unable to deal critical damage, her grade wouldn't be too terrible. With everyone watching her, Lotus Sun stared at the gigantic demon and took a deep breath. She then made a tight fist and bolted forward bravely. With an explosive cracking sound, she struck directly at the sky-swallowing toad's abdomen. This was the exact spot where Orjuo had landed the killing blow back then. Boom! After that one hit, there were still several wisps of smoke wafting out of Lotus Sun's fist. This was the best proof of the powerful friction that had been generated between her fist and the air, showing that she had used all her strength in that one blow. Before long, a huge S appeared in the virtual void. Plasm. 8 Lotus Suns one blow actually got an S grade. Someone cried out in surprise. Seeing this, the 3 examiners couldn't stop blushing with shame. It appeared that they had been worried about Lotus Sun for nothing. She had actually obtained an S grade straight away. But as the future successor of the Haguo Water Curtain Group, her dazzling performance was truly to be expected. After the system upgrade, according to the existing general data, only 1% of past examinees had obtained an S grade, 5% an A grade, and 10% a B grade, while the rest of the examinees had obtained even proportions of C, D and F grades. The number of examinees who had obtained the higher SS grade, or even SSS grade, was so small that the data was negligible. After recording Lotus Sun's grade, the examiners looked at the roll book and called out the next name. Second candidate, Wang Ling. Please come forward to take the test. Bored stiff, Wang Ling raised his head. He hadn't expected that it would be his turn so soon. Directly ignoring Lotus Sun's small smile at him as she left the dais, Wang Ling carefully put on the virtual glasses. He had pulled his spirit energy as far back as it could go, to avoid destroying the machine the instant he put the glasses on. Fortunately, after crushing hundreds of glasses in the last few days, his experience this time round could be considered a pass for Wang Ling. But as it turned out, the biggest problem was still to come. He stared at the enormous cyan toad in front him. To be honest, this was a little unexpected for Wang Ling. Because in the Demon Rampage 6 years ago, the sky-swallowing toad which legendary Odd Duo had killed with his sky-parting ability. Actually, back then, it was Wang Ling who had killed it, on his way to the shops. That year, he was 10 years old. The Demon Rampage 6 years ago was perhaps one of the gravest catastrophes that Wazhu Nation had ever faced since its founding. Failure to properly contain residual spirit energy had resulted in the contamination of the fabric of space, creating holes in the space barrier which allowed the demon world to take advantage of the gate between worlds. The Demon Rampage that year had been so devastating that in one night, Wazhu Nation had made economic losses that ran into tens of billions. The strangest thing was that the demons had retreated as quickly as they had come. But those few days had given rise to several heroic cultivators who had then been honored with the title of Wazhu Nation's Cultivator of the Year. Odd Duo, who had killed the 5th-ranked sky-swallowing toad with his sky-parting skill, had been one of them. Apart from him, Wang Ling remembered that there were 9 other individuals who had been granted that honor, but he couldn't recall their names. He remembered that it had initially been a sunny and cloudless day. Wang Ling had been walking alone down the street in the capital of Wazhu Nation, Star City. He lived in a small villa 30,000 li away from the city center, in a mixed urban and rural area right on the fringes of Star City. Although it was very far away, it had only taken Wang Ling around 5 minutes at full speed to reach the city center. And as for his reason for traveling thousands of li to Star City, he had just wanted to buy a limited edition crispy noodle snack. Wang Ling remembered that small raccoon crispy noodle snacks had released a limited edition collection card that day, which was only being circulated in Star City. If you found the limited edition raccoon flash card in your snack packet, you would be able to enjoy free crispy noodle snacks for the next 200 years. For Wang Ling, this had truly been an offer too tempting to resist. In his memory, the value of these crispy noodle snacks was higher than even the priceless magic objects sold at the market. Because no matter how expensive these objects were, or how rare the material used in their making, they only lasted minutes in Wang Ling's hands before he broke them. But crispy noodle snacks were different. Even if they broke into pieces, he could still happily gorge himself on them, and satisfy his desire for good food. From a young age, Wang Ling had always thought that the inventor of crispy noodle snacks deserved to be given an award for them. Just as he was hurrying to the small El Raccoon Crispy Noodle Snacks flagship store, a well-established business that had been around for some 800 years, the gate between worlds had split the air without warning, suddenly opening with a loud boom in the sky. This moment would be forever etched in Wang Ling's memory. The split in the sky had happened directly above the store, and the violent vibrations and gravitational waves it caused had leveled the big store in an instant. Already Wang Ling couldn't recall much of what he had been feeling at that time. The only thing he remembered was that he had been so angry. And he had looked impatiently for something to vent his resentment on. And so it was at that moment when something large had fallen from the sky. It had a bulky and thick cyan-colored torso, and an insufferably arrogant air as it dropped down in front of Wang Ling. Its compass-sized pupils had flickered with a strange luster. It was a massive, cyan-colored toad. This was probably the biggest monster Wang Ling had seen since he was born. The instant its 300-foot-long body landed on the ground, it raised a dust cloud that stretched out for 50 li around. This poor sky-swallowing toad, however, had been very unlucky to have encountered Wang Ling. How the hell was it to know what was going to happen to it? The sky-swallowing toad hadn't even finished its loud cry before Ng Ling had already pierced through its abdomen with one punch. It fell to the ground, and in the moment that its spirit was drawn out, the sky-swallowing toad had taken a look at the person who had killed it in one blow. A child just 10 years old. At that moment, 10,000 grass mud horses one had galloped through the sky-swallowing toad's heart. Mother ****, what the hell was up with this planet? With the last trace of its spirit energy, the sky-swallowing toad had warned the monsters on the other side of the gate not to approach this world. Thus, the reason why the demons had retreated so quickly 6 years ago was inevitably linked to Wang Ling. As for how Odd Duo came to be credited with killing the sky-swallowing toad, and the awards presentation after, Wang Ling had no idea. He only remembered being heartbroken for a long time over the loss of that distinguished, hundreds of years old flagship store which sold crispy noodle snacks. Ellipsis. This time, standing once again in front of a system-modified, scaled-down version of the sky-swallowing toad, Wang Ling was feeling a mix of emotions. He had anticipated that number 60 high school was bound to make a big deal of Odd Duo's glorious deed in killing the sky-swallowing toad. However, he had never accounted for the possibility that number 60 high school had actually gotten hold of its spirit and had even transmit it into the system database in order to create a more authentic simulation. This was the aura that had killed it with one blow. Even though it had been reduced to this, the sky-swallowing toad had definitely never forgotten it. Even though 6 years had passed, the sky-swallowing toad still recognized Wang Ling as he stood in front of it once again. And so, the instant the toad saw Wang Ling, it immediately turned petrified. There was not a single monster who wanted to be hit twice by such a freak. Would his punch this time destroy the last of its remaining spirit? Honestly speaking, Wang Ling had no idea what to do when faced with the sky-swallowing toad again. While he was hesitating, the sky-swallowing toad made the first move, and fell to the ground with a boom. And, well, that was it. Wang Ling. The sky-swallowing toad's 4 legs were pointed to the sky, and it rolled its eyes emphatically. The system gave its evaluation right away, SSS. Everyone cried out in surprise. What the hell? What is going on? Student Wang hasn't even thrown a punch yet. Could it be a system error? One examiner's jaw had dropped at what he was seeing. That shouldn't be possible. All the equipment was checked yesterday, and there definitely hadn't been any issues. I got it. Another examiner yelled excitedly. Could it be? Is this the legendary killer gaze? Wang Ling. Sky-swallowing toad. That can be the only possibility. Yet another examiner said solemnly, legends speak of some talented people who possess the special ability. They can make monsters dizzy with the aura in their gazes. It's also mentioned in the Cultivation Encyclopedia. I am Imperial Aura. At this moment, the 3 examiners drew in sharp breaths, and were actually so excited they started to cry freely. Yes, it had to be. This could be the only explanation for why Wang Ling was able to knock the toad out just by staring at it. While Wang Ling was at a loss, one examiner came up to him and grasped his hand tightly. Student Wang, you are the future hope of our number 60 high school. According to the regulations, Student Wang will be directly admitted into our No. 60 high school's elite class. Let us give Student Wang Ling a round of applause, and we look forward to him performing even greater feats at number 60 high school. Quote ellipsis. The red setting sun cast a long shadow as Wang Ling walked home in solitude. His eyes swept over the letter for admittance into the elite class, personally presented to him by number 60 high school's director of education. At that moment, in Wang Ling's heart, he didn't know whether he should be cursing mother **** or not. Since childhood, Wang Ling had kept a very low profile, and had always avoided being in the spotlight. Of course, there were exceptions, such as the placement test. For this official evaluation, he had even specially researched how to control his own magnetic field so that it wouldn't crush the machine used in the test. Yet no matter how hard he had tried to find a way to keep a low profile, in the end he had still been admitted into the elite class. How on earth was he supposed to bring this up? At dinner, Wang Ling absent-mindedly chewed a mouthful of rice, and couldn't help looking upward as he heaved a deep sigh. Why was it so hard to be a bad student nowadays? He definitely couldn't count on his parents to understand his pain. The Buffon couple goggled at the letter for admittance into the elite class, personally presented to Wang Ling by the school's director of education. With eyes as large as gongs, they scanned the letter from top to bottom, afraid to miss a single word. After a while, the middle-aged man, who still looked fairly good for his age with a small mustache and slicked back hair, took off his black-rimmed glasses and cupped his chin in his hands as he looked at Wang Ling. Student Wang Ling, I think we should have a word. Although he was very unwilling to acknowledge this man, who until now had yet to reach the foundation establishment stage. As his own father, Wang Ling still very obediently put down his chopsticks. No prizes for guessing. Wang Ling already knew what Father Wang was going to say. His first sentence would definitely be, "You really let me down." And as expected, he had guessed right. "You really let me down." Father Wang let out a deep sigh and pinched his mustache as he said, "Couldn't you do a little worse in your test? You get such good grades every time, it's very awkward for your mother and me." Wang Ling wordlessly rolled his eyes. It wasn't like he deliberately set out to do so well. Like what happened today, it was totally an act of God. "You should know that until now, your mother and I have not yet reached the foundation establishment stage. But there's nonsense talk on the street." At this point, Father Wang covered his face, and even sobbed. "Not only are people saying that we picked you up off the street, some are even saying that I've been cuckolded. Wang Ling, next time, just don't try so hard in your test. Or just directly hand in a blank paper, don't listen to your mother about practicing moderation or whatever. All of that is sheer nonsense." Quote ellipsis quote. Wang Ling was speechless. He had never tried hard on any of his tests, alright. Father Wang sighed. "If you get such good grades again, be careful that I don't spank you." Hearing this, Wang Ling's face turned black, and he straightaway broke his chopsticks. Quote ellipsis quote. Seeing this, Father Wang trembled. "God damn it, I just bought these ninth heaven black iron chopsticks 2 days ago. And already another pair is broken. Forget it, Ling Ling still can't control himself. Why would you bring this up when we're eating?" Compared with Father Wang, Mother Wang's attitude toward this had always been to let nature take its course. Between the two of them, they always embarrassed Wang Ling. More than that, we need to hurry up and teach Ling Ling how to control his strength. And it's also more important that he eats well. Another pair of chopsticks broken. Manufacturers nowadays, the quality is just getting worse and worse. Mother Wang sighed woefully. Air household expenditure was going to increase again. From a young age, Wang Ling had always had immense strength in his hands. After he broke that large sword at the age of 1, father and mother Wang had changed almost all of their furniture, worried that Wang Ling would break them if he wasn't careful. If it wasn't made out of black jade, then it was made out of black iron, and even black diamond. Looking at the broken pair of black iron chopsticks, the Wang couple couldn't help the mix of emotions that welled up in them. When they had been teaching Wang Ling how to use chopsticks, thousands of pairs had been sacrificed to the cause. This could all be summed up in a single phrase: pain in the ass. But this phrase had been a constant for almost all of Wang Ling's life. Things a pain so often that he had gotten used to it. After reaching the super high cultivation realm that everyone dreamed about, what then? Make 100 million by performing tricks on the streets. Sure, Wang Ling could smash towering mountains with his chest, but there weren't that many mountains around for him to smash. And nowadays, natural resources everywhere were protected by the nat. Iron. Smashing a mountain would get you 3 years in prison at the very least, or the death penalty at most. Power to dominate everything. Ambition to rule the planet. Sure, Wang Ling had the strength to do all that. But he would prefer to stay home and read comics. Unlimited magical powers, the great ability to turn time and space upside down. Sure, Wang Ling could open up a spatio-temporal channel with his strength. But if he was caught by the spatial-temporal supervisor, considering how small their family estate was, any punishment he received could reduce them to ruin and poverty in an instant. All in all, reaching a super high cultivation realm was not as relaxing or uncomplicated as one might have imagined. Even if he was the king of cultivation, so what? He still had to deal with nonsense big and small every day, and make meticulous plans for keeping a low profile in order to avoid bringing disaster upon his Muggle parents. Wang Ling looked at the table full of dishes. As he ate a final mouthful of rice, he silently heaved a deep sigh. My heart is exhausted. At his current realm, he could theoretically stop eating and it wouldn't affect him, since he only needed tea or absorb a bit of spirit energy from nature every day. For him, eating now was purely a formality. Ellipsis. After returning to his bedroom, what Wang Ling liked to do most was lie on his small bed in the middle of the night and quietly look at a sky full of stars through his ceiling skylight. It was only during this time that the noise in Wang Ling's ears would subside a little. Even though he couldn't completely block out the effects of his mind-reading ability, they were just a low murmur in his ears during this time. Compared with what it was like during the day, he felt that this was already pretty peaceful. Many times, he had wondered if he was actually from another world. But ironclad evidence from DNA tests had dispelled his doubts when he was still very young. This Muggle couple T was into public displays of affection were his real biological parents. The most frightening thing in the world wasn't making progress and growing every day, it was if that rate of progress never seemed to end. Ellipsis. When he was younger, Wang Ling had attempted to figure out the limits of his realm. It wasn't until he was older that he realized that such limits simply didn't exist for him. With a consistent increase in his realm at a rate of one stage every 2 years, he couldn't tell what the end for him was, and for a time, he had found this very terrifying. But now, what terrified him more was his future high school life. Who the hell knew what was going to happen to him? He had initially planned to enter school quietly, but because of a freak combination of factors, he had been admitted into the elite class. And then there was Lotus Sun. Already he knew that she was going to be a troublesome person. At first, he hadn't planned for their paths to cross often, but this trouble had already arrived on his doorstep. Sitting upright on the bed, Wang Ling rubbed the skin between his eyebrows as his head hurt. Shortly after that, he stretched out one arm to take out a bag of snacks from his drawer. Regardless what happens tomorrow, at that moment, Wang Ling had decided, let's eat some crispy noodle snacks first to chase the uneasiness away. It was the first day of school at number 60 high school. Oh, no. To be more precise, it was the first day of Foundation Establishment High School nationwide. Axio Nation's education policy had always adhered to the no rules, no order motto. Based on a cultural heritage thousands of centuries old, this adage definitely wasn't just for show. Getting to school on time, attending morning classes, eating lunch, leaving school, wearing the compulsory school uniform, all of these had already long existed in well-preserved historical books on school rules and deregulations dating back hundreds of years. Last night, while Wang Ling had been eating his crispy noodle snack, the uniform had been sent to his home via space delivery. The school uniform was blue and white in color, and looked like sportswear. There was even a specially printed word on the back of the uniform, a large elite, for the elite class. Although he had already prepared himself mentally, Wang Ling still couldn't help drawing in a sharp breath at the uniform style. He understood the reasoning behind it. It was normal for an established culture that was thousands of centuries old, or for promoting ethnic culture, or whatever, but couldn't their damn sense of style have also improved a little bit? What the hell was up with the elite on the back of the uniform? A privilege for the elite class. Looking at it from all sides, Wang Ling felt that the inspiration for the uniform was definitely copied off the ancient prison uniform for death row inmates 30,000 years ago, which typically had the word dead printed on the front and back. However, you couldn't say that there weren't any improvements. Almost all the pockets on the uniform were space storage, air capacities so large they would almost never be completely filled. This was a true achievement in line with Wazhu Nation's education policy, which for thousands of years had aimed to reduce the burden on students. Clearly though, this wasn't the main point. For Wang Ling, the heaviest burden of all was how he was going to face the worst King Day tomorrow. From the Wang family's small villa in its mixed urban and rural area. It was 10,000 li to number 60 high school. Almost as fast as the wind, Wang Ling ran full steam along country lanes until he arrived at the school gate in under 2 minutes. After all, he had once run 30,000 li to buy crispy noodle snacks when he had been younger. For him, this distance of 10,000 li was just too relaxing. His face wasn't red, nor was he out of breath. As today was the first day of school, members of the guidance office along with several school leaders were greeting new students in person at the gate. Just as Wang Ling was about to turn a corner, he could hear a few people chatting from afar. I heard that a new student received a SSS grade yesterday. That's right, Headmaster Chen. The student is called Wang Ling and has already joined the elite class. I see, seems like the student is sure to accomplish much in the future. Is student Wang Ling a male or female student? Asked Headmaster Chen. A male student. Headmaster Chen's expression was full of regret. Male students nowadays are already very perceptive. If the student Wang Ling had been a girl, I wouldn't have mind calling her to my office to personally instruct her in her learning. Behind him, each and every one of the school leaders and officers sighed with regret all over their faces. Wang Ling. After tidying up his uniform, Wang Ling calmly walked through the school gate, bowing and saluting without being recognized by anyone. This was because, when he had been running helter-skelter for number 60 high school, he had already used one of the 3000 great spells, the Great Transfiguration spell. Compared with an ordinary disguise technique, the biggest difference was that this powerful ability could completely alter appearances, fingerprints and DNA, and couldn't be detected by even the most advanced technology. On the other hand, the disguise technique was based on an ancient method of makeup application which would immediately be detected by any electronic eye on the street, swiftly triggering a police alert. In this way, Wang Ling successfully slipped into school after escaping the narcotic eye of the various leaders at the school gate. Although it was obviously a tiresome effort, he felt that it was worth it. For Wang Ling, all cheers and applause were superfluous. From a young age, he had always hoped for the most was a peaceful environment where he could study quietly. Unfortunately, none of his king wishes had ever come true. Some people said that when God closed one door, he inevitably opened a window. In Wang Ling's case, it was obviously a more wretched situation. God not only opened both the door and window for him, he even summoned a ferocious sandstorm outside the window. Grade 1. Class 3 was located on the first floor of the number 60 high school teaching building. Location-wise, outside the front door of the classroom was the female toilets, outside the back door was the male toilets. At the same time, it was the class closest to the school canteen. Every time school let out for lunch at noon, a horde of elites could be seen bolting ahead to the battlefield with their tableware raised. It was a magnificent scene beyond compare. Unlike schools in the old days, there were now less courses but longer class periods, which were rigorous, aligned with the trend of the modern cultivation age. Fitness and strength training were a given, and basic courses like drawing talismans, producing spirit water, refining pills and so on would take up all of Wang Ling's time in senior grade 1. Senior grade 1 was when students learned the important basics. Although Wang Ling had already learned all this himself when he was still in the womb, he still had to pretend to know nothing, obediently attend every class, then do his best to get average grades. It was a real pain in the ass for him, having to constantly consider these petty things. Making friends had always been Wang Ling's weak point. Number 60 high school had 2 elite classes, and there were 15 students in his class. After an emotionally tiring morning of selecting a class committee, Wang Ling could probably only remember a handful of names. The brunt of it was the person who had been unanimously elected class monitor, Lotus Sun Haguo Water Curtain Group's young miss, who was at the late foundation establishment stage, presented herself as the standard for the beautiful, modern-day maiden. She did her utmost to display the image of a beautiful, elegant and graceful girl. But while she appeared perfectly flawless, there was enough drama in her heart to write an epic soap opera about bitter family feuds that had never been seen before in the history of Wazhou nation. The second was Super Chen, who was in charge of sports activities. He was at the peak late foundation establishment stage, and was one of the strongest young men with the greatest potential to break through to the golden core stage. Born into an old martial arts family, Super Chen was a muscular man obsessed with keeping fit and bodybuilding. He was probably the most energetic and exuberant person in the whole school. His blood always boiling at some random thing or other, leaving people feeling strangely stirred up and moved. The third was Hero Guo, the political science representative at the late Foundation establishment stage. His family operated a pet shop, which had evolved into a soul beast business in his great-grandfather's generation. He frequently carried around a parrot called Dopey, and together they would put on a two-man show, sometimes critiquing current affairs, sometimes lamenting the state of the nation and its people. He was also known as Gossip Central for all the classes. People had given him the nickname Master of Dopey. The fourth person was also the one that Wang Ling was most wary of, Li Xuanjing. While it sounded like a girl's name, he was a rough-looking fellow who was 190 centimeters tall. Like his name Wan, he was a man of few words, and perhaps the most unremarkable person in the class. Most crucially, Wang Ling realized that his mind-reading ability couldn't be used on him, and he completely couldn't read the other boys' thoughts. This type of situation was rare, and there were only two instances where Wang Ling would be prevented from reading minds. The first was if someone was carrying a powerful magic treasure that blocked out the signal from Wang Ling's spirit energy. The second was if someone was simple or pure enough, and didn't have a single scheming bone in their body. Whatever the case, in Wang Ling's eyes, Li Xuanjing was a ticking time bomb that could explode any time, which was completely detrimental to his plan to hide his identity. All in all, these were the four people around whom Wang Ling was going to have to be especially vigilant. After the period was over, the class was filled with loud bursts of laughter. Looking around his noisy environment, Wang Ling couldn't help but sigh silently. Trying to hide his identity in this wretched hot zone was going to be **** difficult. Glancing at the clock, Wang Ling took a book out of his space pocket, on talismans, and placed it on the table. Just then, the bell for the next class rang. Less than a second after that, a middle-aged woman wearing gold-rimmed glasses and her hair up in a ponytail stormed through the door and up onto the dais, slapping down the blue roll book in her hands. I could already hear all of you in the corridor when I was still in the office. You are the school's elites, making so much noise, whatever will you do next? This middle-aged woman was Pan Sheng Kong, the teacher in charge of Grade 1, Elite Class 3. At the same time, she was also the fifth person around whom Wang Ling needed to be more vigilant.